Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and I hope you're doing well. So in today's video I wanted to share my revision tips and advice on how I got an A star in economics. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, I hope you enjoy and hopefully it's useful. My first tip is to make sure you use the spec, and this goes for any subject. If you know the basic knowledge, you'll be able to apply that to anything. And I was quite lucky that my teacher actually printed out, but you can do this anyway, like the spec for us. I basically wrote the key points around the spec point. So I'd highlight also where it's to do with context, and I'd also have arrows to do with little things that I need to remember for it. And this was quite good for revision because the day before the exam or in the morning, if I had to go over something, this would be really useful to look at. And yeah, I don't know if you can see it, but like I'd have context there. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do a detailed version for each different paper, because I don't know if that will help. This is another example of just writing everything. I'd also kind of draw little diagrams on the side just to make sure I knew everything, because I didn't want to go into the exam thinking, oh, I should have revised this little spec point, because it could come up in any point of the paper. And I'm quite forgetful, so I'd also write definitions if I forgot them. I also wrote evaluation alongside if I needed to, and you kind of needed it for everything, I guess. Another thing that I did that was really useful was using these. So again, I don't know why, but our teacher ended up giving these. What I did was, using the spec, I'd write out the topic, and for example, as you can see, it's economic growth, and I'd look at the spec and write out the different spec points. So I'd write like A, B, C, D and E, and there's also F, and I'll just write out the different things to do with that spec point, and I'd write out like the definition, if there was like a formula I needed, and I'd kind of write it all out in different colours. And I'd also use a whiteboard after to kind of write how much I can remember, then go back to this to see what I missed out. As you can see, I've done it for all four themes, and I drew diagrams. And when evaluation was needed, I'd write that in a different colour. So for example, in this one, I wrote it in brown. The resources that I would use to actually fill this in was my spec book, and then I'd use my normal class notes. I would also watch Econ plus Dow, which was quite good, and I'll speak about how I use those videos to help me. The CGP book and my economics official Edexcel textbook. And I'd say, don't actually ask anyone to do this or to take pictures. I think when you do it yourself, you'll actually take it in, and that's the most important thing. There's no point copying notes or like just reading it off. It's not actually going to be beneficial, whereas actually doing this yourself will be a lot more useful. I also did a keywords sheet after like doing practice papers and like obviously in class and like getting feedback. I never used to like write keywords. I wrote every keyword that I needed to using my Edexcel textbook, using the spec again, and using my CGP book. I can't even remember what some of these mean, to be honest, but and I would do practice questions or past papers, which I'll also mention later. I'd also use this after I've marked it to see, have I used these keywords, have I not, and kind of then try again to make sure I've used as many keywords as I can. Obviously you don't want to overdo it. One thing I'd say is do this yourself, because it's so useful to know what you don't know and what you do know. Another thing that I did, which was useful to some extent, was flashcards, but a lot of people, I think, that I knew did flashcards for everything, so they kind of wrote everything on there, whereas for me, I don't really look at flashcards that much, especially if I've got a lot. So a few weeks before the exam, I basically did a few flashcards, not that many, and I'd write out stuff that I would forget. Write out what I needed to know for like my two countries, which I did the UK and Brazil. So as you can see, I wrote Brazil there, and obviously you don't have time to make it fancy, like we're doing A-levels, and so you need to make sure that it's simple. I also used flashcards for like the diagrams I'd forget, so I used to forget perfect competition and a lot of the market structures. Just didn't understand that, like still probably don't, because if you write a lot, you're not going to go over it, and it's hard for you to actually keep testing yourself. Whereas if you write it out like in a simple way, it'll be easier for you to go over. For some of them, I'd also create essay plans. I'd write out the micro points and macro points as a table, and then evaluation at the bottom too. Another thing that was really useful was post-it notes. I use this for all my A-level subjects, and I wrote basically 2 days before the exam. I would use my spec notes and spec notes that I did on here, combine the two, but basically put it down to one post-it note. And obviously you can do different colours for different things. I didn't really do that. I just found whatever post-it note I had and wrote little things on there, and I drew diagrams on here as well. To test myself, I'd use a whiteboard, and Wilko do this for £4 or £5. I can't actually remember, but the best purchase I ever made for my A-levels. I just printed out loads of essay questions, like the big 25 markers, because that's what I wasn't the best at. And I'd write it on the whiteboard and kind of plan out my answers using like arrows. So obviously it takes so much time writing out the whole essay, and you don't really want to waste time on that. So by doing the arrows and like quickly writing out the points and evaluation as well, which is very important, it's useful to do that. When I found out if I got a good mark on an essay, which wasn't very often, or when planning it with my teacher, I'd go home straight away and I'd actually write out the essay, but like in a format that was quite easy, then write it out in arrows, and like the day before the exam I'd read through everything and highlight it all. And after doing this, I'd also see how much I can remember by writing it on my whiteboard, or like just using like random like rough paper, or like a random, what's it called, like a book, and I'd kind of write as much as I can remember. And for websites and for like books and stuff like that, I'd watch Econ Plus Dow, and I'd kind of just write notes like this, just so simple, and then I would actually be able to go over this rather than it being like PowerPoint notes and just a lot. I just write simple things and just making sure that I understood that. And I'll show you some of my notes as well that I did. I did it quite simple, so I'd also sometimes, well most of the time, just the one that I randomly picked out didn't have it, but I'd also write the spec point. It's so important to know the spec. I literally memorized the spec because you need to know every single point. This was class notes, then I turned it into that, and then I turned it into the spec points like that, and then at the end I turned it into this, and possibly this if I needed to. So can you see how it's like a chain of like the different things I did? And for paper 3, I would draw a table and I'd make up an exam question using the spec again, and I'd basically go through the whole spec and write out a question, write a micro effect and macro effect. Can't remember how many points you need. Pretty sure you only need 1 for micro, 1 for macro for paper 3, with evaluation of course. And then I can just write like using arrows, just basic little points that I need to remember. And I did that for every possible exam question that I made up. Sorry, my phone died, so I had to wait for it to charge, and now it's gone a lot funnier, so sorry for the lighting. But I was talking about my tables for paper 3, and as you can see, for bigger topics, I made them into a lot more detail because it kind of worked as a revision thing. And I've briefly spoken about past papers throughout this video, but the main thing is to make sure you keep redoing past paper questions, seeing if you can improve. Extracts and being able to understand extracts are so important, because if you don't practice trying to analyze extracts, you're not going to be able to do well in the final exam, because you need to be able to read it quickly and then use parts of that information in the questions. Even if you don't answer it, sometimes I just read through the extracts from random questions and kind of see if I can understand it, because that's the main thing. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is how I actually managed to do all this revision. So I first kind of created a to-do list, and I also wrote out the dates of the exam just so I could keep track. And I'd also, that was quite close. I'd also write it out in my book. Well, I had a diary, but I lost it. Like from Feb, I planned it actually in Jan of when I was going to write out the spec points and actually complete them in my mind map. And I started this from Feb half term, so I finished that in end of April during the Easter holidays. So I'd write out the days when I would do it. So for example, micro AS, I'd write the spec point obviously just like 1.2.3, and I'd do it on the Monday, week beginning 25th of Feb. And yeah, I hope you found the revision tips and advice I shared useful. I shall see you later. Bye.